Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
So if you're watching this video, it's possible you followed the QR code in our Christmas card and that you received one of these, which is an original artwork, a hand-pulled print. Otherwise, you may have found this video on YouTube and are interested in learning how to create woodblock prints using a Glowforge and other similar techniques. For those of you who don't know us, this is my wife, Marshelle, artist and printmaker. My name is John Broadwell, and I enjoy using the laser cutter and doing photography and digital image manipulation. So, Marshelle, can you tell us a little bit, what is printmaking?
So printmaking is an art form where you take, you create an image on a matrix and you move that to a substrate. So the matrix could be something like wood, linoleum, a copper plate, a polyester plate. It could be a lithography stone, and you create the image on that article, and then you use that after you manipulate it and ink it to then move the image onto a substrate, usually paper, but you could do it on something like a shirt, like screen printed t-shirts or a towel, and then it allows you to make multiples of the image. But each image is an original artwork because there always will be some variation because you hand ink and manipulate each image on the substrate on the matrix, before you move it to the substrate. So in this case, we used plywood to create woodcuts that John created on the Glowforge out of an image that we created together. Then we inked them and then made each of 121 images.
Okay, and basically we're going to go through the various steps. Before that, just let's talk a little bit about printmaking here in Indianapolis. You're part of a print group. Tell us a little bit about that.
I take classes at the Indianapolis Art Center, and I'm in a group called the 67th Street Printmakers. I am very new to printmaking. It's something that I just recently discovered, but with lots of really, really talented printmakers. Many of them are professional artists that work in all different types of printmaking mediums.
Mm-hmm. So in this video, basically you'll be able to kind of jump through. If you look down at the bottom of the YouTube video, it's broken into chapters. So you'll be able to skip to parts that are of particular interest to you, or watch the whole thing through as you wish. It'll be broken up into a series of steps. We'll talk a little bit about the concept and what we wanted to do. Basically, we've done cards with drawings, often of food, Christmas-based food in the past. And the concept we wanted to do this time was, since we were working on this far in advance of Christmas, the idea of something that was Christmas food but not done yet. Basically, ingredients or the preparation or something like that. So we explored that a little bit. Then we did the creation of a reference photo. Once we have the reference photo, Marshelle does a reduction of the photo to black and white, lines and shapes in Procreate. Once we have that, then we can prepare the files to send to the laser cutter for preparation to be cut into the plywood. After that, we have the blocks. They need to be prepared for printing. Then tell us a little bit about paper real quick.
So a lot of times printmaking paper comes in really, really big sheets, usually 22 by 30, and then you end up having to tear it down. You can get pads of printmaking paper. If you're new to it, you can get more inexpensive paper from Strathmore and Stonehenge that's already pre-cut into shapes. But a lot of times really nice printmaking paper like BFK Reeve comes in at least 22 by 30 sheets, sometimes much bigger. And so you tear the paper down into the sizes that you want using a tear bar, which is it's a long metal ruler that has kind of a gripper on the back of it so that your paper doesn't move around.
And that's another sense of the uniqueness of each piece, right? Because not just is every print different, every piece of paper is slightly different.
A little bit, depending on how you tear it down.
Okay. And so we'll go through a little bit of tearing of the paper. Then we'll look at actually making the prints. After that, the prints need to dry for a significant amount of time. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then finally, the additioning and signing, which is the last step of preparing the prints. And at that point, then they'll be ready to be put into the Christmas cards and mailed out to everybody. So we hope that you enjoy the print that you've got. And we hope that you'll enjoy this video of seeing a little bit of the process that went into making it. So we're going to go through a series of steps for that. The first step was the concept, and Shelley and I talked about it, and she's very inspired by art that tries to capture food, and she has a whole website about things like that. And so we said, what do we want to do? Well, we did the cookie bar we did the cookie bar and we did the brownie before. And so we said, let's do something a little bit different so it doesn't seem like the same thing. So this year we're going to do a cookie that hasn't been made yet, or a series of cookies. And so we thought, for the theme for this, let's do making Christmas cookies. And so we got a variety of different ingredients that we thought might make up kind of a nice reference photo. The ultimate goal of this is to get a photo that will make a nice reference that Shelley will take into the iPad application Procreate and then convert from something that's color and grayscale and various tones into something that is purely black and white. And that purely black and white, then we will use a laser to create something that looks like this. This is called a woodcut. A reference photo is in a lot of ways similar to a still life photo, but has some important differences. The biggest difference is we're going to take the thing and totally throw it away. And so we'll break some of the rules that you might use for taking a still life photo because we don't really want the photo. Like, for instance, you could shoot really good still life photos with a cell phone. I've got a prosumer level DSLR camera. I might use that for a still life, but that really I don't need that for this, because we're going to go from something that's colored with lots of tones to something that's purely black and white. So, like for instance, a still life I might shoot in sunlight to get, really nice color. We're going to use a little area light where we can move it back and forth, make it brighter and dimmer. And in that way, we'll be able to control what kind of shadows we get. Marshelle will take that and the way that she creates the lines and hatches and things like that in the graphic that we'll put into the laser to cut onto the wood, will have to reflect those things. The other interesting thing is that the photo that we get is not going to be what comes out. So like we look at this McCormick's vanilla bottle and there's a lot of text on there. It's a very busy label. The sprinkles has all of this stuff at the bottom and, little words and a logo. But since we're throwing away the picture, Shelley can take and abstract a lot of that stuff out. And so, where you might, if you wanted to simplify a photo, you might do it in Photoshop and get rid of it. Well, when she does the work in Procreate, she just won't transfer those things. She'll leave them blank or abstract them or simplify them. So for right now, what we're going to do is I'm just going to go and shut off lights so that all of this ambient light goes away. And we end up with something with the shadows. And right off the bat, I don't know what we're going to end up with. We're just going to experiment with some things. And we've decided that we're going to do landscape, which basically means we're going to turn the paper so that it's wide, not tall. And we'll just do some arranging of our various things. We've got some vanilla, we've got some sprinkles, some more vanilla. Got two different bottles so that we can come up with a different composition. Cinnamon. We've got, what is this? Galnalgal? I don't know, what is that?
Galangal, you use it in a lot of Thai cooking.
Right, so that doesn't go in cookies. But what does go in cookies is ginger. But right now we don't have any ginger. But then, again, nice thing about reference photos, we will have this bottle, which we like, that has a nice kind of even label on it and a nice stark black top, and it's a different shape than our other bottles. We'll use that in place of the ginger, and then Shelley can just make it say ginger in the final photograph. Again, it's a reference, not a still life. So, you know, we'll start with something probably that's pretty busy and probably won't want all of these various objects in it, but we'll start with some, because we're going to be limited to something that'll fit inside a Christmas card. If she was doing a bigger print, she could definitely do something to capture all of this detail. We're not gonna probably be able to put that level of detail on a 4x6 card that we can reasonably print. So I'm just going to take a look around here and try some different angles and see which of these things that I like. I got to watch because I'm in my own shadow here. And right off the bat, one of the things that I'm seeing is that we're going to have to either angle these or shoot from a fairly top-down angle to be able to get the shape of the cookie cutters. Otherwise, they just disappear. So right off of the bat, this is probably too much.
And I think the allspice should come out too.
Okay, so we're going to lose the
because I think
allspice.
those look too similar. I think it's too close in size to the.
Yeah, and I like this classic looking bottle, but I think it takes up an awful lot of space in the background. And so for right now, we'll go with the sprinkles, the vanilla, the cinnamon, and the ginger. Let's lose one of the eggs. And maybe we'll move we'll move the spatula to the back. And we'll do something like that and shoot the whole thing from the top down. And right off the bat, I can see that's not working. I'm going to move that. We need a better, that's a much better shape now. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to shoot it. And one of the things I can do is move back and zoom in with my camera. The camera behaves in different ways in terms of the way that it renders things, depending on if you're close or far. As I move in closely, the amount of, like, I don't know what the word for it is, I'm sure there's a technical term, but the amount of bend that we get because of how close the lens is different than if we go back and zoom in. So one of the things is I'll experiment with is just using different focal lengths to get different experiences. It looks to me too like the reflections off of the cookie cutters may be a problem, but I think Shelley can take care of that. What do you think? What else should we do, Shell? How would you change it?
I think there's maybe just too much in it. And I don't know that the sprinkle bottle looks very nice.
So maybe we can lose that. Should we get rid of the tree?
And maybe there should be more overlap instead of the things looking so lined up.
Yeah, and there's now 3 of them. One good rule is when you have things, make it an odd number of things, not an even number of things. Generally, that tends to work better. It's just more aesthetic. And I'm making her work hard here because that'll be a lot of little things to draw, but she can do it. So, and I'm going to take a look at that one. I like that better. And I'm looking at it and kind of picturing this part of my cell phone is about the 4x6 card that we'll have.
And we're not going to use the scoop, correct? The scoop is not
I got
part
a
of
cookie
it.
scoop in here, but it's pretty clear that, you know, even though, well, first of all, the focus is on gingerbread cookies. You don't use a scoop for that, or some of the others. So it probably doesn't belong in that picture. So we're going to shoot that. And so my camera also has a grayscale function, which lets me see. Shelley will have a lot of options. She doesn't have to pick black ink on white background, but by changing to grayscale, I get a better idea of what something might look like as one color. So I don't necessarily like exactly where my shadows are going over there, because it feels like maybe those are too much of a continuation of the box. So I'm going to move my light over a little bit and that will move the direction of the shadow. And now if you look back here, I get kind of a nice break where the shadow's clearly going in a different direction than what that is. And I don't like I've got some directions that don't seem true, and I've got a slight sense of bowing of those edges, and that's because I'm too close. I'm getting some distortion that way. So I'm going to take the exact same photo, but I'm going to move back and shoot it like that. And let's take a look at that.
And with the shadow being that long, it's going to make the subject smaller maybe than you want it to be. So I don't know if you want the shadow to be quite that long, because it'll make me make the thing further back.
Yeah, because it won't look good if you don't get the whole shadow, do you? So we look at that. That's what it would. That's the shape it would take to get the whole picture. So that's not good. So how do we get that shadow to be shorter? Well, just like in real life, as you get closer to noon, then the shadows get shorter. So we will take and move our light up. So I'm going to unscrew this. I'm going to move the light up. And again, Shelley can play with, just as if we were in Photoshop or Lightroom, she can play with the contrast and brightness on this to decide how she wants to do that. But you can see previously we had a very long shadow. Now by moving the light, we have a much shorter shadow. And so now we'll do the same thing. Again, I feel like we need to be back and zoom in. That feels like a fairly good reference. What do you think?
I think so.
So we've got our reference photo now, and Shelley's looking at it and trying to determine, what do you think you'll do with it now?
So at this point, what I have is, you framed it for me at about the ratio that we want the final picture to be. For any type of printmaking, like relief printing, intaglio printing, most printmaking, you're supposed to reverse it, because your plate's here, the paper's here, and when you peel it off, you need to make sure that your letters aren't reversed. For some things, more simple things, I will go ahead and reverse my reference photo to begin with. With this, it's kind of complex. I'm going to want to try to make the letters that I do leave. I'm going to simplify a lot of it, but I'd like to leave the letters that I do include. I want to make sure that I can do them so that they look nice, and I'm not going to be able to do that backwards. So with this one, my plan is to get the plate completely drawn in Procreate with all the line work, and then when I'm finished, give it to John, and then for John to reverse it. So what I have to do now is plan how to make these different shades of light grays, medium grays, very whites, blacks, translate to being not just grayscale, but purely black and white. And the way I will do that is with line work. And I have to look at it, and I haven't really decided, and part of it I won't decide until I get into it and start playing with it, how to make the line work contrast. So, for instance, this part of the eggshell is a very similar color, or tone, not color, to the table. And so I have to make sure to contrast those somehow. So I'm not going to contrast them by different amounts of black or heavier lines. I'll probably contrast them by having different shapes to the line, so that it's the same amount of blackness or whiteness, but it'll stand out because of the texture. For the table, I'm planning, at least right now, for most of the line work to go this way. For the spatula, for most of the line work to go that way. For the cookie cutter, for it to follow the shape of the cutter. And for the egg, since it's very round, to follow its round shape. So to do a round shape that would be in contrast to the straight lines I'm going to use here. The program I'm going to be using to do the drawing is Procreate on the iPad. It's the only thing I use the iPad for, this drawing. I will insert the picture as a layer in Procreate. Then I will add several layers on top and start adding the line work. The brushes, loads and loads of companies make brushes for Procreate. One of my favorite ones is a company called Retro Supply Company, and they specialize in making brushes and color sets that allow you do something on the computer, either Procreate or Illustrator or Photoshop, that looks like retro, old-fashioned types of graphic design and screen printing and that sort of thing, or comic books or old newsprint. So they have a lot of paper, textures. More importantly for me, they have a couple of inking sets that I like. There's one that's called Broken Inkers, and then one that's called, I believe, Cross Country Crosshatchers, and I think another that's called Dead Pen. And so the Dead Pen one, it makes the pen look like your pen's a little bit wobbly and a little bit drippy, and you can turn that kind of up or down, because when this finishes, I want this to look like a traditional woodcut, something that would pick up the imperfections if I were taking traditional woodcut tools and carving a piece of plywood, which is how most people prepare traditional woodcuts. So that's my plan. I'm just kind of looking at the image now and trying to figure out how I'm going to translate these tones to be purely black and white with line work.
Now that we have the graphic from Procreate that Marshelle created, we need to prepare it for burning to a block on the laser. So here we have the picture that she created, and we need to make two fundamental changes to it. One is we need to flip it left to right because we are going to print the backwards of what it is. So we're going to go to image rotation and flip canvas horizontal. The second is, even though this looks like it's black and white, we should take a look and make sure that it is actually black and white. So we're going to go to Adjustment, Threshold. And okay, this one actually is pretty good. We can see that there's some taper off here, and what that is the hardness of the brushes that were used to draw it. So we can see as we move through this area right here, it changes the image. And what we need is a purely black and white image. So we're going to take a look at it and say, okay, what do I think is going to burn the best and give the best result as a wood print? So we definitely don't want these white speckles in here. And we definitely don't want it to get over here where we start filling in some of the hashes, even though we're not all the way to the black level. So we're going to look at that, and I'm going to drag this left until her ink lines look like they're good solid lines without stuff in the middle. So let's zoom in a little bit, and we'll just use the spatula as our example on that. Image, adjustments, threshold, because we definitely want separation on the white lines, but we don't want unnecessary dots in the middle. So we're going to go out a little bit more. I want these over here to disappear. Okay, I like that level. We're going to say okay with that. Now, what is white in the picture, we want to not have ink on it. The laser is going to burn where there's black. So we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Invert. Now we have a black on white image. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a file save as. And we will make this Christmas 2201 invert reverse. So now we have our inverted image. Now, anywhere that's black now is going to be burned by the laser. We don't want to burn this entire area because that's going to take a really long time. Burning wood off back and forth line by line takes a long time. And we know that in a little bit, we're going to put a cut around this to minimize it. So what I'm going to do here is do an outline of the black that minimizes the amount of engraving that we're going to have to do, because the laser will go back and forth side to side cutting the black, and the degree to which we can minimize the amount of left-right motion that it needs to do will help speed up the engraving process. And it's not huge, you know, I mean, we could just take the time, but it's unnecessary wear on the laser and unnecessary time. So I selected the image. Now I'm going to go to select. Now I'm going to go to select invert. Then that gives us that. And I'm just going to hit the delete key. That will, and I'm going to fill it in with the background color, which is white. And so now we've got that. So I'm going to file save that. Now we're going to go into, this program is called InkScape. It is an open source version of Adobe Illustrator, which you could use as well. I'm going to drag our image in here and embed it in the file. So now we've got our image. And I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. Now we're going to add a cut line to this. And the goal of this is to reduce the amount of chatter that we get. Chatter is when you go to ink the block and you end up with unexpected, undesired extra ink on the non-raised part of the block. And we don't want that. So we're going to go around the image and kind of tightly put a vector line that the laser will cut. And one of the things you'll see here is that I'm putting a few extra bumps in some of these places where I have convex and concave. And the purpose for that is that after we finish this, we'll be making what's called a registration plate, which is something that we set this into that will help us guide the image onto the paper. And the more of these kind of changes in the curve of the line we have, the better and more tightly this is going to fit into the plate, into the registration plate. And I don't like a couple of those lines that I got right here. I'm going to make this red so that we can see it easily. That's going to be ugly on the laser. So let's see. Okay, I like that better. And I don't think I'm too tight anywhere. So I like that. So now we're going to go back, and to further reduce chatter, we're going to do a cut on some of these inner black areas that we don't necessarily need a lot of excess black area. That's just an area where you could end up with ink that you don't need it. And you have to be careful. You can't make it too thin, or when you cut it, you'll end up with something fragile that'll break. But that looks pretty solid. And let's do one more here. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And we'll actually make all of those green, because by making them different colors, we can adjust the order in which the laser cuts them. And let's go ahead and put a small one in here as well. Okay, so that should do it. We'll do a file save as and save that as an SVG file. Next, we need to transfer it to the Glowforge. So we're going to go to New Design and say Import Artwork, Upload, and there is our image. And so we're going to want to burn this onto some plywood, and typically I use this basswood, whatever it is, that looks pretty good. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to engrave first, and what we're going to do there is we're going to call it an HD graphic, and we're going to go into settings on that. We're going to say vary power because we really only want black and white. We're going to drive the power up to 50% because we want a much deeper engrave than is normal, because we want a whole lot of relief. And then on the cut, we're going to go, that looks good. We're going to use a proof grade cut on that, and we're going to do a cut on that. And we can see it'll do it in the right order. It'll do an engrave, then it will do the cut, and then it will do the outer cut. So that should look pretty good. So let's set up the laser, and we will cut this thing. We also need a registration block, which is how we're going to keep the woodcut blocks in the proper positions to print with. We're making copies of 4 blocks that we're going to use simultaneously for the printing. And what we have here is artboard. I took the same vector that I used to outline the block, and now I'm cutting 4 copies of that into a piece of artboard that will fit like puzzle pieces. There's also a score line around the outside that will show Shelley where to put her piece of paper that matches up with those score lines. Okay, what are we doing today?
I'm going to make a test print for the first time using all 4 of the plates. The plates were made out of plywood, which are like sheets of wood with glue between. When you burn them, sometimes the recessed parts, you can feel the glue and it's sticky. So I'm going to spray the whole thing with a light coat of workable fixative.
And what is that?
This is Krylon Fine Art Workable Fixative. And it's nice because it seals what's underneath it down, but then it has enough texture that it'll allow me to still pick up ink when I'm going to make the prints. I use this a lot for colored pencil and pastel. Sometimes if my colored pencil pieces get too slick and I want to add a couple more layers, then I'll put the workable fixative on it and it'll give it enough texture to help pick up a couple more
a couple more layers of pencil.
Cool.
So just spray these.
And how long will that take to dry?
About an hour to be safe. It says it's dry in 10 minutes.
It smells, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's real strong. You need to spray these things outside.
Yeah.
So, but it works really, really well. I did for the shirt I'm wearing. I did the same thing. This was also a plate that was made with the Glowforge and some plywood, and I did the same thing. I sprayed it with workable fixative before I put the glue on, before I put the ink on, and it turned out really nice. It was able to pick up the ink.
Okay, so in about an hour we'll do some test prints, huh?
Yep.
Okay, so we've got our 4 blocks and the fixative has set. What are you doing now?
I'm just smoothing this ink out a little bit to kind of loosen it up a little bit. This is Speedball Professional Relief Ink Super Graphic Black. It's really nice. It's oil-based ink, but it's water miscible, so I can clean it up with dish detergent and regular soap rather than having to use mineral spirits. I don't like to use anything that involves mineral spirits or anything like that at home because I don't have a good way to dispose of things like that at home as opposed to at the art center. So I'm kind of working the ink, and then I will get ready to ink the blocks, and I'm going to pull a first print using the registration block that John created, and then the 4 separate Glowforge created woodcuts, and we will see if they're ready to go. And if they're ready to go, then I'll print the rest of the edition. The edition is the whole group of prints that we finished with. So if something's wrong or they need to be tweaked or that sort of thing, then the first couple of prints might be working proof, so I can have a look at them to see if there's something that we need to go in and fix. Once it's ready to go, a lot of times people will mark the first proof that's ready to go as BAT, which stands for bon terre, which is ready to pull, which means that's kind of the standard that you measure all the rest of the proofs against. Right, so this is a brayer or a roller, and I'm going to use this to roll the ink onto the plate, and you kind of have to play with it a little bit, and usually the first couple of prints aren't great because you have to see how much ink you need to put on them, and you don't want to put too much, because if you put too much ink then you lose all of your detail. If you put too little, obviously you don't get a nice impression. It has kind of this nice sound, and that means the ink's about ready and it looks pretty even on there. What I have found with these woodcuts that we've done is that the first couple of impressions, it seems like you need a lot of extra ink, because they seem to, even with the workable fixative on them, they seem to sort of soak in the ink in a way that linoleum doesn't. So, and I'm not very experienced with any of the printmaking, but particularly the wood is not something I'm terribly experienced with.
So you're going to ink all 4 plates like that, correct? Mm-hmm. So you're doing 4 plates before you print any. Do you have to worry about the ink drying on the plates before you're ready to use it? How fast does that happen?
Really fast with water-based inks, and that's why they're not as nice to work with. They're convenient because they do dry really fast, but if you're doing something where you need to mess with it and you want a little more open time, that's why oil-based products are good to work with. And these water-soluble oils are kind of a good middle ground because you get a lot of the nice qualities of water-based products, like acrylic kind of products, and then you get some of the nice properties of the oil-based as well. And I've never done 4 blocks at the same time, so this is new. We have done things where we've done multiple colors, and I have done things that involve, after you ink the plates, wanting to use Q-tips and that sort of thing to create highlights and so forth.
So now you're putting them in the registration plate?
Mm-hmm.
And you have the scored alignment lines on the registration plate, right?
Yes, and this should make things pretty even.
And what is that you're putting on now? What's the extra piece of paper?
This is newsprint. It's just really cheap paper, and it's mostly to keep the felt from getting dirty.
What is the felt for?
It helps push the paper down into the block to make sure you get a nice impression. I think really, and I don't know, I'm not an expert on it, but I think that it might help account for maybe some waviness in the base, perhaps. So I'm pretty happy with that one. I think that turned out really nicely.
Yeah. Good.
So we lost some definition up here. It's not as inky as that one. And I can tell because of the numbers, this is the first one we did, and this had been previously inked. So kind of like what I was saying.
And where are the numbers?
The numbers are right there. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and that's 4. But you can tell this one that I had previously inked to do a little working proof off of.
It's the best one
It's the best
by far.
one, even though I inked all of them exactly the same this time around. It just kind of takes a couple of pulls to get everything right.
So this will be a working proof, not one that you'll number.
Right.
And so people can see which of the 4 blocks they got based on that little number in the cinnamon can,
Right.
correct?
Absolutely.
Now you've taken them out and you're going to re-ink them, and just basically you'll repeat the process till you get one you like. And then you'll run, probably about 30 pages of that to get all the prints that we want to send out for Christmas.
Right. Because we'd like to have 100 total, and I'm going to have to tear these down after I'm finished, and so some of them won't turn out right. I might have some where maybe I like 3 of the impressions, but maybe not all 4. So we wanted to build in a little bit of slack.
And you'll just number them from 1 to 120 or 100 or whatever, regardless of the plate number.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you got there?
This is the last impression that I did from our project.
Okay, so what are you going to do with that now?
I'm gonna hang it up to dry. I did not tear this one. I was on a roll, and so I didn't tear this one down like I did the other ones. I wanted to make a few extras because things were going pretty well, and the prints were turning out well. So the rest of these are 8 by 12. This is 9 by 12, so I'll have to cut another extra inch off before I not cut, but tear another inch off when I divide them into the 4 by 6.
Okay, and it's about the middle. Almost the end of October. We're almost Halloween now, right? So tell me about what you're doing now. You're going to hang these up on this rack. Then what happens?
They have to dry, and it's an oil-based ink that I use. It's water miscible oil-based ink, and so it takes a while to dry. It'll take at least 2 weeks for these to dry. Maybe a little bit more, but at least 2 weeks for it to be totally dry. Water-based ink dries really, really fast, but sometimes it gums up the plates, and it's not as nice overall. So.
All right. Well, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about what you're doing now.
I'm tearing these prints down. We put 4 on a sheet. Each print is going to be 4 by 6, and so the paper that I did the prints on is 9 by 12. I tore most of them down until the very end to 8 by 12 before I started. This one I didn't. And then I'm just going to cut them in half this way and that way. So I'm using a map that's a bit warped from doing hot stuff on it, but I shouldn't. And then this tear bar.
What's the difference between a tear bar and a ruler?
It's a ruler, but it's got this grippy material on the back, so it keeps the paper from sliding around on you too much when you're tearing the pieces apart.
And then after that, you'll sign them and number them?
Yeah. So we'll edition them. We'll number each one of the prints, and we will put the name on it, the name of the piece on each one, and we'll put our signatures on each one. When you tear them, you tear towards the bar, it'll make it more even.
And at this point, we're a week out from Thanksgiving, so we're getting close to the end.
It's November 25th, 2022. It's day after Thanksgiving. John and I have finished all of the prints that we're going to send in our Christmas cards. And so today we're going to be putting the edition together, editioning them or numbering them. And so on each of the impressions or each individual print, we're going to put the number of the impression, the title, our initials, and the date. This is just an artist proof one. It's one that didn't turn out great, but I used as an example for how we're going to number the others so that they all have a certain uniformity to them. So each one is an individual piece of art, but they should be pretty similar. They all have a little bit of variations, but as far as how we're numbering them and that sort of thing, we're trying to make them as similar as possible.
And how many are there?
We have a total of 121 in the edition.
And when you mark that as 121, what does that mean? Are you going to make more later or not? Or
that means that's it. So there won't be any more, and the blocks that we use to create them will be done with those. I'm going to put some final fixative on them. We're going to turn them into ornaments, but they won't be able to be used again. And so this is a complete edition of 121. Sometimes people make prints in what are called open editions. So they are individual hand-created prints just like this, but it's the artist's way of saying they might make 10 or they might make 100, however many people want to buy. That's how many that they have. So, but this is not an open edition. It's just an edition of 121.
So now we'll sit down and we'll start. What do you use to mark them? A pen?
Don't use a pen. Use a pencil. It's just it's a traditional thing. So you always use a pencil to mark them, and there are a couple different ways that people can mark them, but usually you put the information on the front of the print to tell you what you're getting and how many of them there are. And so over on this side, a lot of times, like this one says artist proof, that's our proof that we're using. Those are just extras that aren't part of the edition for the artist. Sometimes you might see a marking that says PP, which is printer proof. You might see one that says BAT, which means bon attrait, which is good to pull. That's something that if somebody's done one and they want to see what's exactly a perfect proof for them to compare the rest of them to, that means it's good to pull, good to go. So there's a lot of different kinds of markings that you can see on this side of an original print, but it's pretty standardized. So if you see a print and you don't understand what the initials are or what the markings mean, there's lots of places online that you can find out what the markings mean, what you have. If you bought a print and you're not exactly sure what it means.